Oh, you bastard! Winston, £3.5 up the swallow.
Come in, the girls just well.
Oh, and the welcome. Get it up, you.
Hello, boys and girls, lads and lasses, and welcome back to another Wednesday night movie with myself and Jim the Viking, who will be keeping quiet for a wee because Jim's just back from a throat issue. So how are you feeling?
I had a wee bug.
Yeah, hope your throat gets a lot better very soon, but take as much time as it needs to get your throat back in working order. Who am I going to argue with?
Yeah, I definitely missed them. It's been at least since December before we had a good back and forth.
Yes, definitely. Looking forward to it. Missing it. It's so have you been watching your Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
I saw that one a lot as a kid. So we're talking very late 80s, early 90s. And it was one of those that it was played on the TV every now and then. It's one of those things that we're considering, or when I was still back in Scandinavia, it was considered a matinee film.
Yeah.
So if you managed to get home by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because you were done with schools and all that stuff, there used to be a film on, and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang include, as well as bed knobs and broomsticks.
Yeah.
There were tons of others. If they didn't have a film to put on, they had the Black and White Sorrows on the TV set.
Yeah.
No, this was throughout the week. It was always around like
usually about 6
3:30.
o'clock. See, at 6 o'clock, I always saw things coming in from school, and it was always 6 o'clock. Was always things like Zorro, Dr. Snuggles, Star Trek.
Oh,
BBC
Dr. Snuggles, I haven't seen in probably 20 years, but I absolutely loved that one as well as a kid.
Yeah, that was quite popular when we were at school, and we were secondary school, and loads of people loved that one. So late teenagers. So it was a good one. And you're right. This is one of the movies that I saw on the TV a lot growing up. It was quite popular. And considering it's a musical, it was popular. And I think it was because of I suppose, harking back to the bygone age, the good old days, as it were. And you had some nice, quirky characters like Grandpa Potts and what was his name? Scrumptious, the Lord Scrumptious, James Robertson Justice, because you always used to see him as a grumpy one, or you would see him in a comedy like the Carry On Doctor and stuff like that. And he was always the very harsh patron. of the piece.
Well,
But
we had
varies.
used to have this kind of film back in the days, and I don't know when it actually stopped. Because this is all over the place, but it's family friendly.
Mhm.
It is easy to watch, and I don't know what happened to me when I hit my late teens, but I was quite opposed to the whole thing of musical films. But then I realized that, hang on, I got Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
I had tons of these films that I absolutely loved growing up with. And it's like all of them are musicals. I was just going
Yeah.
to really.
See, I grew up with the musicals because my mum used to love a musical, so I grew up watching them, and I really enjoy them. You know, my favourite Christmas one is White Christmas musical. Then you've got Calamity Jane, such like
Yes.
so. There's a lot like that, and I enjoy them. But I think Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is one of those ones, as you said, very family friendly one, and it's just fun. And it's got some weird, quirky characters. You're sitting there thinking, they're weird. They're basically weird, and you can't imagine you can imagine the idea behind them, but when they put them on screen, they seem a wee bit more sinister for a family film than you realise. But
Yes.
they work. The Child Catcher, for instance.
They work, but even the good guys are even a bit over the top as well. In opposition to the bad guys, if we put it that way.
Yes, because you look at Grandpa Potts, the inventors, the Toymaker, Benny Hill. You
Yeah.
just had so many good character actors in this, and you had a lot of good fun bits, like Barbara Windsor and Arthur Mullard as the couple in the circus where he gets his haircut. The
Oh,
bowl.
yes, yeah.
Arthur Mullard, because he was
It's like
a mainstay for a lot of those British movies, British comedies. He was always the heavy, but seeing him here with the baldy bit cut out and him still getting angry and things like that was funny. Barbara Windsor, it must have been an early one for Barbara Windsor to be in.
when did it come out? Was it
This came out in
mid or early
68.
80s?
This came out in 68.
Was it 68? I thought that this
Yeah.
was a very modern one. But again, I'll blame it on my recovery moments. But I
Yeah.
thought this one was quite late for being this kind of film. I thought it was
Oh,
after the whole Dukes of Hazzard and everything.
No, this is 60. I'm just looking back in Barbara Windsor. She started The Bells of St. Trinian. She played a schoolgirl uncredited in 54. And Dreamer's Highway was the second one, a kids. So she'd been going for a while. Some things she'd been uncredited with, or it was just a small part. She was bits here and there, but she'd done it. She'd been even on Des O'Connor and stuff like that. So this was probably she had been in Dad's Army just before she was on this, so she had done a lot. I thought this was an early one, probably an early one where she a main part, because it's all TVs. There was no movies. She did Carry On Spying. Actually, tell a lie, she did Carry On Spying 4 years before she did this.
I think this is probably our own personal views, because although I am older than I look and appear, Alien and Aliens didn't really come into my crosshairs until late 90s. Even though they were at the same time as Star Wars.
Yeah.
But Star Wars I watched in very early 1980s. So for me, I know when and where Star Wars came from, but when my thinking comes into it, when it comes to aliens, it wasn't until late 90s.
I think you're probably right. It probably the late 80s, early 90s was when I started probably watching the TV a wee bit more and catching up with a lot of these. Obviously, a lot of the old classic stuff I'd been watching since I was a kid, but more of the newer stuff at the time, as you said, like Star Wars and stuff like that. But Battle Beyond the Stars, things, Close Encounters, were the first type of movies like that I started seeing. But things like this, I think I grew up because it was on so often. You know what I mean? And there's Darren's on the fond memories of the film, along with Wizard of Oz. Yep, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Yeah, I usually watch them probably bank holidays. They were on quite a lot. Christmas time, I think, yes, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was probably on around about Christmas a lot more. But it was one of those movies it was on whenever, because it didn't have a theme. You could they would put it on to their schedules whenever they had a space for it, I think.
Yeah.
So
I would say it's probably more. It probably didn't deserve it, but it felt like a filler. We don't have a good film to put on. Let's put on Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
yeah, something that will be entertaining and good for it. But the reason I like this movie, apart from the music, some of the music, it's a love story. Can't deny it's a love story between Caractacus and Truly. It's a love story with there's a couple of things I always found weird is they never mentioned their mother, what happened to her mother. They didn't even, it's just something, it was just a case of, here's Potts, not a great parent, but a really nice father, because he let his kids run riot. So he was a good dad, but he wasn't a good parent because he let the kids run riot and miss school and stuff like that. So as a parent, he failed, but as a dad, the kids
come on.
loved it.
Any parent that allows you to skip school every now and then is a good parent
From
in
the
my
kids'
mind.
point of view, not an issue. But you consider that there's usually someone. So like if the father was the one that was letting them miss school and run around, maybe the grandfather would have been the one who was the more make sure they still did this and still did that and made sure they go to school, and they're just skipping because him. But that's what I'm saying. He was a good dad because he would spend time with them and do things, but he didn't pay attention to the overall picture.
Yeah,
So as a parent, he didn't work very well, but as a dad, he worked great.
Yeah, it can't be like it is today, where you see those constant reports of everybody's just relying on school being the extra parent so that you can go to work and whatnot. This was more benign in that sense. Yes, he was more,
and it was a throwback, considering it was done in the late 60s. It was a throwback to the early pre-First World War. So it was.
Yeah.
Because
the
war,
the laissez-faire was still. It looked so laid back, but it wasn't laid back. It was still mindful and careful. It's like, okay, you're skipping school today. That means I'm actually interested in what are you doing today? How are you using this extra time? Is there anything I can teach you? Is there anything that can be in there? And I thought, well, it is the older me thinking, wow, this is really clever. But when I saw it, when I was quite young, I was like, hey, there are parents out there that let you skip school. And then not realizing that you're actually getting schooled on the days you're skipping school.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. It's just that was the first thing. When I remember seeing it, I was sitting there thinking, he's a great dad, but as a parent, he's failing because he's obviously not putting a lot of discipline. But as a dad, he was great because the kids loved being with him and he'd spend time with them and do things with them. But when it came to things like education and stuff like that, he was quite happy for it to skip and not take any responsibility for it. That's what I'm saying. But it was even later on, it was a case of, well, there's no mention of the mother. You presume she passed away, but he didn't have that sadness about him when he met Trudy and stuff like that. It's almost like that was in the past. They don't mention it. It's never mentioned at all. The mother was never mentioned. It was just things that I found later on after rewatching it. But it's still a great story. And the fact is, it spends the whole movie after he gets the car and doing it, telling him an adventure story.
Yes.
About the car.
I mean, take one of the greatest adventure story ever told, which is Never Ending Story. Peter Falk and Fred Savage. It's essentially grandpa and sick little kid in a bedroom, and he reads this amazing story. It's educational and it has everything in there. This is the kind of stories I would like to think that they built it on. It's like there is value in there. It's like share an adventure, share something, even if you're trapped.
Yes, and it's good that he's basically sitting telling the adventure, and the good thing is they just meld it in. Because I remember the very first time I realised that the story didn't happen; it was all a story he was telling. Because when I was growing up, I never even noticed that part. I remember him saying, "Oh, that's no so and so. That's the pirate ship. It's the," and then it went into the story. And to me, there was no skip. It was just a fantasy story. The whole movie was a fantasy story until I later realised that that's him telling them a story that's visualised in the movie. But there's the story he tells in the middle of it. It finishes, his story finishes about 5 minutes from the end, but it doesn't start until about 40 minutes in. And that's the story of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And that's what I found really interesting as I was growing older, realizing that what I thought of the movie was completely different. Because prior to that, if somebody asked me to tell the story of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, it would have been about a flying car that could float, or a magic car that could float and fly, and the child catcher and the Toymaker and the Baron and his wife and all that.
I would probably not even remember it that far. For me, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is like that big poster, and it's the flying car. That is the complete thing. It's like, how do you describe it? It's like, it's got a flying car.
Yes,
Why are
but
you
that's what I'm
not
saying.
interested?
When I was younger, that was the story of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It wasn't the story inside the movie called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. To me, the whole story was all about this magic car. It was only later on, after I'd watched it a couple of times and I was maturing, that I realised that, well, this is actually about a family life, and that's just a story that they brought to life in the camera. That's what I'm saying. So the way I looked at it when I was watching it as younger is completely different as I watched it as I was older, because the storytelling part in the middle, I missed it. I just thought the whole movie was about the magic car Chitty Chitty Bang Bang when I was younger. And so that was all just watching the never ending story. That was the movie of the car. Yeah, I mean,
not to mention it's like the highlight points. It's he's got a cool car.
Well, there you go.
Then that's it.
Based in a novel by Ian Fleming, screenplay by Roald Dahl.
I actually didn't know that, but I can see the psychological clashes happening between them.
Yeah, but it was the novel by Ian Fleming, but it was a screenplay by Roald Dahl. You know what I mean?
Good catch there, Darren. I did not know that part. Then again, it's Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, if I would say top 100 films, it would definitely be on that list, but
Oh,
I
yes.
would not know it to that kind of intimacy of who did what.
Yeah, I knew it was based on a novel by Ian Fleming, but it was surprising that who wrote the screenplay based on the novel. And you think about it, Roald Dahl did that. Ian Fleming, Roald Dahl involved. Then you've got Dick Van Dyke. You've got Barbara Windsor, but Benny Hill, James Robertson, Justice, Stanley Unwin got a big part in it as the Chancellor, which I just thought even Lionel Jeffries was a very well-known name at the time. So there's a lot of big names in the movie. And it's one of the inventors, accordingly, was Maxwell. Was it Maxwell? Aye, Maxwell. But I didn't recognise him as one of the inventors. Yeah. When I was watching a bit with the inventors, the big tall guy, he played in Rent-A-Ghost. He played Mr. Top. Was it Mr.? It wasn't Mr. Topov. It was he played the one with the top hat. I can't even remember his name. But one of the inventors in that was in Rent-A-Ghost. I remember that growing up. It was only because I used to watch Rent-A-Ghost and I recognised him straight away. The big when he says, when I started here, they were talking about the rack. When I started here, I was a midget, and he's like 6'4" or 6, something like that. Dick Van Dyke's looking up at him. No, it was that Lionel Jeffries, who I think is about 5'8", probably about the same height as me. So based on that, but I remember that's who he was because I recognised him, but I wasn't entirely sure who it was. But the basics of the story in this, I like. It is a love story, and it's all about Caractacus Potts and his mad inventions which never work, which with his kids dragging in the gorgeous truly scrumptious Sally Ann Howe. And I still, even to this day, it's a case of I still say occasionally it's very truly scrumptious, and it's just based on this movie. There's certain things this movie just brings out. It's a hark back to the good old days, but there's some silliness in it. Like, for instance, when she's the one with the car, and 3 times you see her driving into the river. One time she could drive out, the other 2 times she couldn't, and had to be carried out. It would have been funnier if each time she could, the first time she maybe had to walk out because she couldn't drive out, but they had to obviously get her to meet Caractacus Potts, so they had to do that time. But doing it each time afterwards, she drove into the same part each time, and she had to get carried out the other 2 times. Wee things like that, sort of. Yeah, I mean, but I like this story because it's obviously a love story on that. They go on the picnic, and then the story of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang gets told about the flying car and the floating car and the wicked Baron and the wicked Baroness and the child catcher and the inventors, and everybody's getting chopped off of their heads. Children's not allowed and things like that. It's a good fantasy story a dad's telling his kids to entertain them. And I must admit, it was a very good story within the story, which is entertaining. And to me, that's the way they should do. If they want to actually introduce something that's fantasy into the real world, the easy way to do it is having someone start off by telling a story. Then you could have the real world and magic mixed together. So it is a way of doing it, because you look at they could introduce someone telling their son or daughter a story about superheroes, and then it could be real. So it doesn't need to be comic book accurate version. It could be real within the story because it's the father telling a story or the mother telling a story to the son, daughter, grandchildren, whatever. And I thought that was a good way of introducing the fantasy elements of the movie. It is one of those movies that one or two bits of music, the songs were lovey-dovey, didn't bother me. But growing up, things like Truly Scrumptious or Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or the one when they were dancing in the circus about the cane with the canes. I can't. What was that called? Can't remember off the top of my head. But there was a lot of good songs that song and dance, like Toot Sweet was one in the. It reminded me of when they were dancing on the roofs in Mary Poppins. It was Dick Van Dyke dancing on the roof with all the chimney sweeps. The bit in the sweet shop, in the shop when they're singing Toot Sweet reminded me of it because they went up and along at the top, and that just reminded me of Mary Poppins. And that there was bits in this movie that reminded me of Mary Poppins because of the way they did it. And I think it's maybe because it was Dick Van Dyke, but it was also the type of movie making they did. So the dance.
I think this is kind of a lost art. I haven't seen films like this in forever.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's stories that you miss.
Yeah, but whereas you have that, I do have. I'm not sure even if it's an anecdote, but early 80s when I was in, I wouldn't say it was called child daycare and whatnot. We did have this very elderly Chinese lady, and she was going, "Oh, you think He-Man and Superman and all of these are amazing?" When she was growing up back in the far east, she was telling us about the heroes she was growing up with, and it was this sword wielding hero that he didn't need an umbrella because he was so fast with his sword that he could cut the water drops as they were falling. It always had a funny look to me as a kid. It's like, oh, is he doing like a helicopter on top of his head or something just to keep them away? So it works like an umbrella does.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she was absolutely amazing when it came to sharing further experience in terms of what makes characters interesting. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
how did you train? How do you learn? How did you become this way? Obviously, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang has the issue that a lot of the other stuff have. Even if we go into this is a more modern film. It's The Time Traveler. I think it's Guy something where he's going so far forward in the future that humanity has literally gone back to caveman's
Time Machine
it,
with the
it,
Molloy and what was the other one? The Meloy were the ones on the thing in the Time Machine.
yes.
And what was the underground dwellers?
They had the name. It's basically Sheldon has a nightmare about it in
Yes.
The Big Bang Theory
Uh-huh.
because they ordered the machine, the actual machine that was used in the film, which I really liked. I mean, I would love that as someone that likes to collect a little bit of
That would be a great computer
toys.
chair. That would be a great computer chair.
Yes, absolutely, it would definitely be. But again, it comes back to if you can build an amazing universe, just like Tolkien, even G.R.R. Martin, Jordan. Oh, yeah, there are so many I could mention on this one. They managed to build scary bad guys but they also managed to build the good guys.
Yeah, the Morlock.
Morlock, yes.
Yeah.
And whereas Chitty Chitty Bang Bang has that very, I'm not sure if it's old school quality or anything. It has that family friendly vibe to it. Whereas the things I mentioned, you should probably be a bit older. You should not be exposed to the dangers of Middle Earth before you're at least 13 or 14, because you need a little bit more maturity to understand the nuances when they start talking about, okay, this is not a good thing, etc., etc. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is thanks, Kelly. But yeah, it has more that lightheartedness, and
It
one
has.
of one of my guilty go-to pleasures when it comes to musicals is Grease, and I'm
Yes.
even to the even to this day I'm being mocked by people. It's like, oh come on, you're Jim the Viking. What the heck
No,
are you
I
doing?
quite agree. See, if I was see musicals, if I was take my top 5 musicals, White Christmas is at number 1.
Yeah.
Grease will always be at number 2. Calamity Jane is at number 3. The other 2 change, but those 3 are my favourite 3 musicals. And Grease was always number 2, right behind White Christmas. And it's the only reason it was right behind White Christmas because I grew up with White Christmas. That is just my go-to Christmas one. But Grease, I love Grease. It's
Yeah.
just got one of those movies that even the silly bits when Danny's coming up and giving it the his silly laugh. It's just wee things like that. It grabs you. You know what I mean? Rizzo, look at me, I'm Sandra Dee, and all that. I just love those. That's another great movie. That's one I want to do in the future as well. A review of Grease gives me an excuse to rewatch it, and everybody.
Oh, I think that one would be full of, oh, what was your best section of it, and etc. Because it is, and I believe Greece is one of those, just like the one we're talking about this evening, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, Mary Poppins.
Mhm.
When it comes to musicals, I think Greece managed to be probably the perfection of all of them, because it managed to have both the acting drama and the musical parts set in so well. Whereas
Yeah,
the other ones, if you compare it to that, they not average is the wrong word to use. They just happen to be, we know what we're doing. We have done these productions for a while now.
yeah.
Uh,
See, that's the thing about musicals. I know some people actually think musicals are not great movies for storytelling because they are just musicals. It'd be like watching a stage play. But to me, they aren't, because they're taking that fantasy aspect of someone singing about throughout the story, and they're making it interesting. Like, you look at the basic story of Greece, even look at the basic story of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
mm,
Man looking after his 2 kids, not letting them run riot, meets woman, goes for a picnic, and falls in love, and that is it. He
yes.
basically they went for a picnic, and that was it. The rest of it was just a story he told everybody. But so the basic story without all the songs and all that is a very short story, but they drag it out with the story in the middle. Grease is the basic story about this tough guy gang member falling for somebody during the spring break and wants to change, and she doesn't believe it, and it's just about the 2 of them getting back together again. But the music part makes the story more entertaining, and that's why I like musicals. Some musicals, I think the music is needed. Some of them, it's just for entertainment. I know it's all for entertainment, but some parts of it, sometimes the songs actually help the story along. whereas some of them it's just part of the genre. So because it's a musical, they sing a song about something, but it doesn't move the thing forward. Whereas things like Toot Sweet, that was it was just about, if he walked in and says, well, the sweet's just you, and that's it, the work. But the song sort of brought it forward, the whole thing about the sweet itself. The same as about how Truly Scrumptious, that was about how the kids in that were falling for her, and how Caractacus was falling for her when she was doing the doll. But it is so they were needed in the story to highlight how things were being how people were feeling. Yeah, I mean, it's, you look at Grace, the one they're singing, she hopelessly devoted is needed in Grace, because it gives that part where she's singing about missing him and him singing as well. It's needed in the story, and I think the same idea with this. There's parts of the song you need, because although they seem trivial, they're actually about the characters, how they're feeling about the other characters, and that's what because you wouldn't have that without the song.
It's a slightly odd thought here, but if you and I had been discussing this back in the day as men, boy, would we have gotten our backsides kicked in. It's just like, oh, come on,
I was a geek. I always used to get that anyway. So
it's just not that we were geeky. It's like, hey, we're talking musicals and stuff that actually really made us happy to watch.
Hey, I'll have you know, when I was in school, I was in the school version of West Side Story. We called it East Side Story because East End of Glasgow. And instead of the sharks and the jets, it was the punks and the mods. So we basically, I did that in school. I was a part of I was up there best as a mod.
Yeah, I wasn't brave enough ever to join the musical crowd, but
yes, I did.
I did help.
I was a bit player. I was in the back, just as one of the boys, but we had the songs and all that. Yes, but yeah, I was actually. But it was dire. It was fun to do, but I was glad I didn't have a major singing role. But one of my friends grew up with, he was in, was it the Barber of Barossa? I'm the Barber of Barossa, guaranteed to save you clothes. He did that part. He was the barber. And so we used to slag him about it, but a year later we joined him on stage for the next one because it was so much fun. Even though we were slagging him for doing it, we joined him the next year.
I think it's part of what makes us a little bit more, I'm not going to say unique, but the entire panel, the chat, most of the people that join us, we were the ones that, this is a little bit odd, but I absolutely love it. Look at people like Roman, Killinge, when who have done major changes to their life and the background they come from. For them to be geeks, that's an effort on top of doing stuff in life, and that is why I like everybody that do things like this, and they have an interest. I even considered one of my colleagues who absolutely loves a very unique thing, but he has no one to talk to. And I keep telling him, go
YouTube
out there. YouTube it. Go out there. Talk to other people. Just share it on your Twitter profile or whatnot. You'll find people to talk about, because it is not unique, but you literally have no person that is part of your friend circle at the moment to talk to about that thing that you really, really like or even love.
Yeah, definitely.
For me, it's stuff like this. I love these chats that we do have.
Mhm.
Wish I could contribute more, but I promise to fix my throat very quickly.
You
So
need to keep that. That is basically that's your money maker. Get out there and gabbing.
exactly, it's sadly the thing that actually brings in more attention to it, and I can't use it too much at the moment. But we do have a massive and even fantastic backlog of films we want to go through for this year.
Yes. Oh God, yes.
And I'd love to just discuss with people that actually have seen it or are interested about those things.
Yeah. I'm catching up on things that people have recommended to me last year. I'm finally catching up. Like, for instance, I'm watching Attack on Titan.
Yeah, I did see that was your sex life or something on Twitter.
It was one of those ones. If you could actually, your last TV program was a description of your sex life. Mine was I'm on season 3 of Attack on Titan. But it's a weird one. It's obviously Japanese and it's been dubbed, but it's one of those ones that's really interesting. But it's unlike the West. They don't throw everything forward, so it's all action. There's bits in it you're sitting there thinking, why did they do that? They seem to be paying a bit of time on that. That seems weird. But it's not to push the story forward. It's just they've got a story to tell, and these bits might slow it down, but it's part of the story. And I like that aspect of it. Although I find it weird because we're not used to it. We're used to the story getting pushed forward.
But does it is also a part? I know we're probably straying too far away from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang at the moment, but I've always enjoyed the good, shall we say, Eastern Asia produced kind of thinking or storytelling, because they don't follow the way we produce a story here in the West. They can be all over the place, but at the end they still manage to literally hit the nail on the head.
Definitely.
And I'm seeing so many fantastic stuff coming out from there, but I will give them a bit of a kicking. To this date, I do not know a good Eastern Asia produced musical, if you put it that way.
I can agree, only for a simple fact is it's coming out of Japan. A lot of it would be kabuki theatre type, because that's still popular in Japan, kabuki theatre. And I have seen a couple of kabuki, and it's not my thing. I like parts of it. I like when they're doing the storytelling and there's like a fight sequence or something. They've been trained to do that. A lot of the theatrical actors, so they can do that as part and parcel of the story, and it makes it look really good, really well done. So there's parts of it I like, but the music side of it, it's obviously, it'd be like some people saying bagpipes, don't like bagpipes. We're used to it, so up here it's not a major issue. So me listening to bagpipes is actually Disney go to the ear. Whereas I know some people who think he says it's like chalkboard, but we grew up with the sound of the bagpipes or in music like in school or even watching the TV and stuff like that. So we're a bit more used to it.
Only time I think when bagpipes sounds like bad pipes, it's when there is someone that is playing it. They know the notes, but they can't actually handle the instrument.
Yeah.
Any other time when Queen's Funeral or Hogmanay or any of these places is usually someone that's very skilled with the instrument.
Glasgow any Saturday, you'll hear the buskers and there'll be a couple of bagpipes along the streets, no problem. You still get that quite a lot. People playing the pipes. Sometimes you'll get the ones with the drums and pipes as well. One of my friends I used to work with, he was a piper. One of our teachers was a piper. He used to every year during this coming up to Christmas, he would play the pipes in the playground. So he would just for this simple fact is it just became a tradition. He would do it if it was wet outside, if it was snowing or something, he would do it in the hall. And we would all be there in the hall, the assembly, and he would play the pipes. But there would be times when it was okay weather, because you wouldn't say it was great weather compared to the time of year it was done. It was done over the December period. So 90% of the time it was probably in the assembly hall. But every year he would do it. And so we grew up with that in our secondary school, not a problem. But I suppose what we'll do is we'll go back to Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, because we're with your throat, try to keep it thingy, and what we'll do is we'll finish off in about 10 minutes. So we'll give us a 10 minutes. That way your throat can get back to getting healthy.
Oh, getting healthy is you want me to shut the hell up.
No. I want you back so we can argue more. I'm missing those disagreements, I'm telling you.
Yeah, no, they're good ones. But I will be back, and I will reassure anyone that is in the chat as well. It's just a temporary break on my behalf. I did have a little bit of surgery. It's just the recovery phase. They had to do a little bit of heavy work around, shall we say, the throat and vocal cords and everything, which is why I'm sounding as shit as I do. Obviously, I'm older than I look, so I'm not.
Unfortunately, I'm not as old as I look.
No, but it is the recovery period that is the painful part of that, because I am not a teenager anymore.
Bye, Kelly.
Take care, Kelly. Safe journey.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wen.
Yeah, but so we'll finish off. See, with this movie, what part of it is your favourite part?
I can't do a favourite part on this one for two reasons. I haven't watched it recently, so I will have to go very broad scope, and it is the fact that it is one of those musicals that I miss being created. And when I say that, it is the matinee part that I miss. It is the early afternoon, easily available films, and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I think for me, when I was growing up, being 8, 9, 10 years old, just sitting down, you have the permission, you've done your chores, you've done everything, and it is just sit and watch, just enjoy the journey that this film actually gives you. So I'm literally giving this film an excuse of everything is great with it. It's not exactly true, but I'm not reviewing it with my 2023 brain, where we have started actually going, hang on, are you really doing that thing? That's not good, or this was a really stocky wooden thing. I'm playing it just purely off of what I remember as a kid.
It's basically, I'm trying to actually stop that playing, and it won't stop.
I can hear the music.
Right, that's better. Just wouldn't stop there for a minute. I don't know why. It just decided to, because obviously I've got it in the DVD sitting in, but it's my mouse is actually playing silly buggers. So every so often I'll click on something, and then it will just bounce to it. And so I'll be over here, click, 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 and my mouse will go down as I'm clicking, and it goes boom and play. And then when I try and get it back, the mouse goes and won't move to the other screen, and you're sitting there thinking, bug off. So
Yeah,
I need to
I
replace
know
my
the
mouse, I
feeling.
think. So,
I know the feeling.
but I'm actually just trying to
Well,
find
not the
that scene.
feeling. I actually have experienced that plenty of times. It probably happened to me this morning.
Yeah, this is I think this is one of my favourite scenes in the movie. Right, I'm just bounce it on a wee bit and then pause it. This is the part I like the best. So I'm just going to share it. Give me 2 secs. I put it on mute so we don't get hit.
No worries.
Is that bit there?
Oh, yes, this one.
Yeah, I mean. So I'll put a bit of music on. What can you see? See, that's my favourite part of the music, the bit where he comes out, that part where he's dancing with her. But Dick Van Dyke is actually he was just very talented with the stuff that he could do. Yeah, I mean that is my favourite part. This scene where she's still singing and dancing the same way, and he's doing his other bit, so the two songs are sort of meshing together, and it sort of works. And I like that just because I find it probably my favourite part of the musical.
I'm not sure if that is the correct term about it, but this is a part of the whole slapstick humor genre.
Yeah.
It's not say, what were the three actors called that was big, famous in US?
Curly, Larry, and Moe, the Three Stooges.
Yeah, the Three Stooges. That they were more violence focused.
They were violent slapstick, whereas you had things like Norman Wisdom, which was just slapstick. It was pratfalls and stuff like that.
Yeah, whereas this one is more, hang on, why will you not talk to me? What is wrong here? And I think we even had, at least up until the early 2000s, a little bit of not understanding the imaginary or the magic world to the real world.
Yeah.
Obviously, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang gives you the magic world immediately, so you don't have to understand that, hey, there is a barrier here. It's not like not Ashen Princess, the princess that loses her shoes after the princess
Oh, the
ball.
Snow White, no Snow White, Cinderella.
Cinderella, yeah. Where the magic world comes in a little bit later on.
Yeah, where you've got the fairy godmother with the pumpkin and the mice tournament. Yeah, the horseman and the horse and carriage. Yep.
Yeah, it is not immediately available as it is in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or say Mary Poppins. The magic is immediately there. You don't have to ask questions. The magic world doesn't have to be introduced. It's just part of the fabric.
Well, the good thing about this one is they introduce it just by tell us a story, Dad. And then the story just makes all these things magical. So that's just a dad telling a story and just putting in, well, how can the car come out the water? Oh, it becomes a boat. Oh, they've stolen Grandpa in a Zeppelin. How can we get him? The car becomes an aeroplane. Magic. They introduce the magic within the story.
I actually think I can come up with the term, but I don't think it's something I can actually attribute to me, obviously, because I'm not the parent. I think now that you said it that way, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Mary Poppins, even Grease is a little bit of daddy bullshit. It started telling you a story, And then when the kids start asking questions that are too hard to explain, it's like, don't worry about it. The car flies away at the end of the film, or it has magic wings, or there's an umbrella that lets the nanny fly.
Yeah. And that, to me, is what it is. It's basically, you think about Mary Poppins, somebody saying, but they jumped into a picture and she floats down. Then it's quite simple. You have the mum or somebody else telling a story. Your next nanny will be like this, and then suddenly they go into the Mary Poppins. So you've got no need for that. Obviously, Mary Poppins, it just started, and the Mary brings. They basically said what it is when the wind, basically the wind blew. The wind has changed. It's bringing something with it. So they didn't need to tell you about the magic of Mary Poppins. She just came in, and the magic came with her. Then when she left, the magic went. And that's why you had bedknobs and broomsticks as well. Similar idea. But it's the same in Greece at the end with the car.
Yeah,
that is just part of the
I'm
story.
going to be honest with you when it comes to Greece and the car at the end of the whole thing. I don't know what that is supposed to be. It just feels like they had money to spend. It was meant to be.
I think somebody thought, well, it'll fly away, it'll look cool because, but yeah, it just seemed weird. It was basically, was it a car crash and he was just going to heaven? Don't know, but
don't know.
I think it was just because it'll look cool, and that's what I think they did. The bit where it's suddenly taken off.
Yeah, I mean, it could have perfectly ended them just driving off the football field or the carnival field, just onto the high road and just go from there. Not just like, we're flying.
For me, not the first time when I've watched it more recently, and I see that part, to me that is it's symbolic of the whole movie. It is saying that the fantasy continues.
Technically, it did. I think there was a Greece too, but I'm not
there
sure
was a
if it
Grease
was
2
ever
and it was
connected to Greece 1. And
Grease
then you
2
had
Grease 2 was pants.
Olivia Newton-Jones, or if that was her name, she
Olivia
went on doing a lot of other,
yeah, or as we used to call her, Olivia Neutron Bomb.
Oh, come on, she looked good in
no, that was a good thing. That was a good thing.
Yeah,
because she blew your mind.
Back to the neutron bomb then.
Yeah, and Olivia Neutron Bomb. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think to me it was a case of the fantasy continues, because obviously the story was a fantasy, but it was the musical side of it, and then like the bit where they were dancing on the thing, me in the car, and they would steal, but in effect they were meant to be stealing bits of the car to put it together from other cars. But the way it flies off, it is the fantasy continues. I think that's what they were going for, based on my understanding of the visuals of it. But could be wrong. Whereas this one, I think it didn't need that, because it had the fantasy in the middle.
Is good.
I think the fantasy in the middle of this one was perfect, because it didn't need a fantasy ending at the end. The fantasy ending, I suppose, is the two of them decide to get married.
Yeah.
So that was a different set of fantasy.
This is something, as a big geek, I always hated when I pick up a book, when I've been in the library or the bookshop. I pick up a new story and I see, fantastic, there's 16 books in this series. It's a series I have never heard about before. It's written by someone Jordan-ish. 16 books to read about it. But it is, you pick up that first book and you're going for a fantastic journey, but that journey will have an end.
Yes.
And that's the sad part about anything from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang to Aliens to Commando to Avatar to anything we're talking about these days. They have to end it somehow, and sadly, Hollywood is getting more commercial
Hollywood
on
don't want
the
things to end.
cut.
So Hollywood don't want things to end. They'll always leave an opening.
They try to, but they rarely be able to build onto
That's
it.
why I think that's why very rarely a sequel works for me. Although Terminator 2, I think, was a better one than Terminator.
Well, we do have, between you and I, we have the last 40 years worth of sampling.
Mm-hmm.
Terminator 2, like you just said, Aliens is far greater than Alien, even though Alien is absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few other sequels that kick the butt of their prequels, so to speak. But I don't think between you and I, we could rack up 20 sequels or follow ups that were better than the first films.
No, God, no. There's very few. And there's ones, remakes as well. I think remakes sometimes fail, but there is a couple out there I think work. But it's the same idea. I wouldn't actually be able to name you 10 remakes that I think are better than the original. Or even as good as the original. Because you look at Thing from Another Planet and The Thing. The Thing was a better movie. The Thing from Another Planet was of its time. Then you've got Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It could be seen as a remake or a sequel. Either way, the way it works. But I think it shows there's very few you could watch a remake or a sequel after set amount of time and go, that worked.
I mean? Sad to say, I heard they're trying to remake, or they're trying to make a Gladiator 2 film.
Yes, I heard.
And I'm just going, there is no way you can improve on the original one. Everything from the soundtrack to
the way it finished. They finished it with almost a definite end.
Yes, I will give that out, but it would have to be mastermind level, like super
Remember,
genius.
it's modern Hollywood. There's no such thing as masterminds in Hollywood.
Exactly. So they wouldn't be able to do that. So I have to take Gladiator as the original film. And Gladiator is the first time James Cameron is actually breaking a lot of the core tenets of how you should introduce a story. It's one of the first films in modern times that actually takes. There was a film professor that actually told me about this because I was at uni at the time. It was literally the early days, and he just pointed out, just like, that's a flaw, that's a flaw, that's a flaw, and this is how Hollywood does it. But he said it's something like 15 minutes from start until the bad guy is actually introduced. That has, for him, having studied film since the early 50s, he said, this is unheard of. The bad guy is literally the first part you introduce, so you can tell the audience what your hero needs to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
But in Gladiator, that takes 15 minutes. Okay, it's almost like 2 hour 45 minutes or whatever it is in the special edition, but it should have been done within the first 5 minutes, according to him. You need to tell who is the bad guy, what's the objective, who do you need to defeat, what's your opposition, what's your target, what's your desire, where's your goal, where do you want to go from here.
But that's the thing with movies. some work, some don't. Some change the trope, some change the composition in the work. Most don't. It's, to me, the same idea as modern musicals. To me, don't work because, see, musicals are of the time. I can't think of a modern musical it works, whereas even a modern remake of a musical that works, because
musicals tend to come from us here in UK now, and all of them are modded on the. It's not Britain come dancing. What is that thing that is at end of every year where there's like celebrities teamed up with professional dancer and they have to learn.
It's celebrity come dance. No, come dancing. What is the celebrity dance thing called? So I'm sure it's celebrity come dancing.
It's something like that. So it's very clean cut.
See, you've got the dancing on ice, which is the skating one.
Yeah, but it is so clean cut, and the costumes are perfect, and the camera angles are perfect, and everything. Whereas you take Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, camera angles weren't perfect. Costumes were whatever they were told to wear that day. The props, the sets, everything. They had to work with it rather than being lifted up by it. Didn't have modern. What's it called? I think sequence is something I've heard when it comes to costumes. I couldn't tell you what the heck a sequence is, or if it's even a thing, but they have them now, and I'm thinking about the modern showman or the relatable showman or big showman, whatever it was. It came out probably 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it was all about clean cut costumes and everything rather than actually them playing.
I think the only one that I've heard about which was really successful was the one with Hugh Jackman, the Greatest Showman.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking about. And we do have a correction here in the chat. Peter Harrington says he was Strictly Come Dancing. That's the name of it.
Strictly, so Strictly Come Dancing. I thought it was Celebrity Come Dancing, but that's only because they usually shove celebrity in front of everything. So it's probably Celebrity Strictly Come Dancing, they call it. But it's the same idea. You had Moulin Rouge, you had The Greatest Showman. So there's two musicals that I can name in the last 20 years. I can't.
Moulin Rouge must probably be in the 25-year range now, but
and then even in Chicago, which was not a remake, but it's a theatre of. But I'm talking about movies rather than the theatre side of it, because musicals will always work in the theatre because of the type you're going to the theatre, so you would expect a bit more entertainment side. But for musicals, I can't think of any other ones that have sort of reached the public consciousness, whereas of the times early on, so you had 40s, 50s, 60s, there was a lot of musicals come out, even into this late 60s, early 70s, you had musicals.
I'm gonna drop off quite soon now, but
well, we're going to actually finish
I will not drop the name, but
we'll finish up so you can get your throat to rest, and we'll have a short night. So what we'll do is we'll finish here. Jim, thank you for joining me for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and I hope you stay well. And ladies and gents, boys and girls in the stream, thank you for joining us and keeping us right with certain things, as always.
You always do.
Yep. And remember, we're not old, we're classic. PJ Maybe and Jim the Viking out.